Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's special Ableton online event. My name's Merlin, and I'm an Ableton certified trainer based in Denmark. And this is the first streaming event of our newly established Nordic certified trainer community here on YouTube. So in this channel, you'll find a lot of music making videos and content from myself, both in English and in regional Nordic languages. So tonight, before we go any further, I would invite you to subscribe to this channel. Tonight, we have a special guest coming all the way streaming live from Iceland. We would like to welcome JFDR. If you have any questions or comments along the performance or the talk, then please post them in the chat where we'll make sure they're forwarded on for the question and answer session at the end. So before I go on, I would like to say that your thoughts and your feedback tonight are really important to us, and we'd like to know how we did. So there'll be a questionnaire that I'm going to post in the chat, and if you have the time, we'd love it if you could fill that out. So without further ado, I would like to pass you over to my colleague Joseph over in Berlin. Enjoy, and thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Merlin, for hosting us on your new YouTube channel. I'm really happy to be here tonight, and it's great that we can all connect from all these different parts of the world, especially in these challenging times. My name's Joseph, and I work as a content producer for Ableton here in Berlin. And I'm very honored to be joined today by Jofridis Alcodotier, who is also known by her stage name as Merlin mentioned, JFDR. And JFDR is your solo name, is that right, Jof?
Yes. Hi. I don't know if I'm on the video. Am I on the video? Hello.
You're on. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
This is my first concert in a very long time. It feels really strange, but wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. So JFDR is my solo artist name.
Okay.
And yeah. Sorry, just saying something. Yes, I'm with you.
So yeah, so I've been diving into some of your interviews, and you've had an amazing career. You've pretty much, I think you started out at a young age, right? 14 or sort of around then. You actually started to release music professionally.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah?
Well, at the very start, it was questionably professional. It was very DIY for a few years, but. Yeah, when that was a band I started with my sister, quite kind of like a folky guitar music. And a couple of years later, we signed with a label in Germany, an indie label. And since then, the ball kind of started rolling for me.
Well, we're going to talk a bit more about that tonight, because I think it's really interesting how you've actually come a really long way in a short space of time and overcome a lot of barriers that I think a lot of young music makers or people who are new to music making experience, especially accessing the technology and learning to record. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And another theme we wanted to cover was this topic of setting limitations. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been widely documented that when we set limitations in music or in creativity, it can actually give our minds less to think about, and that can actually encourage flow. Mm-hmm. And I think you said to us before that this concept of doing a lot with little is actually really integral to your process. So it'd be great, like, if we can dive in and see what that actually means to you in your workflows. Sound good?
Sounds great. Absolutely.
But before we do that, you're going to do a little performance.
Yes, I was going to play a couple of songs, 2 songs, and this, yeah, for the sake of the fact that we are opening up and we are, I'm bearing my life set and I'm bearing the insights and my, and also as well as my thought process and the deeper thinking of everything. In light of that, I will share with you that this has happened to me several times when I'm not performing regularly, that on the spot I forget the lyrics to my songs, which is insane, but it's not that insane because it's 6 months since I last played or more. So I'm just going to quickly read through on my screen.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Improvisation is also something we've talked about in other workshops.
But yeah, I'm ready. I think I will get through easy.
All right.
So I'm going to play 2 songs, and then we can dive into what we want to do a surgery on, open up and inspect. Let's get a bit of reverb here. This is a song called My Work. I stare into nothing, I yearn for the innocence I once think I had. A lack of sins for fear that grows as I grow older. I've carried these thoughts and I've drowned them in work, and I want myself blue the way down. Oh mother, would you cry if you hear this song? I woke up with dreams I've not dreamt for a month. I was ill and I couldn't sleep long. I dreamed I'd gone back home to collect my old winter coat. It's that time of year and I'd growing up in a place that always was cold. Mother, I woke up so sad, heaven stayed where I swam in your kindness and warmth, so quiet and strong, quiet and strong. Oh mother, would you cry if I tell you the things I have done? Hurried my death, done my duty so wrong. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the lights and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn off the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my
turn the light and get on with my work. I stare into nothing and slow down my thoughts as I turn
That was really beautiful. Thank you for that, Yoff. You really have an incredible stage presence. I've been enjoying watching some of your performances on YouTube over the last weeks, and you make it look really effortless. Do you get do you get nervous before you play, or?
I get sometimes, yes, I get a bit nervous, and I think right now as well, I get a little like, I haven't done this in so long. It's such a muscle memory thing for me, and I really feel that I am actually thinking a lot more now than I normally would if I was doing it more often. But no, it feels good to be doing it. Actually, I really enjoy it, and I really can't wait to play in front of a live audience, like people in the room.
Yeah,
it's going to be exciting.
I think as well, playing online is a really different experience, right? To playing to actual people that you can kind of see in a room. I think a lot of musicians have commented on struggling with this kind of universe we've been thrown into in the last year.
You have to remind yourself exactly that there are people on the other end, and it's it's a kind of an imagination thing. You have to sort of imagine the energy coming from the universe, connect to the invisible, more cosmic forces, maybe.
Yeah.
So, should I do one more song, or should I start our chat?
Maybe we should start our chat, because I think we're kind of running about
We're
time
where
we should. So let's start with the chat, and then maybe you can play some more towards the end.
Absolutely.
So I think a good place to start, maybe if we talk a little bit more about your kind of journey and your career. We mentioned before that you started on your career at a pretty young age with your sister, with this indie folk duo, and then you moved on to this trio Samaris, and then there was a collective Gangly, and then you've also emerged in the last years as JFDR, which is more for your solo work. You've also been famously cited by Björk as a huge inspiration, I read in a Guardian article. And on top of all that, you've also started a record label, I believe, called White Sun Recordings.
Yeah, a sort of an imprint, but mainly just to kind of house my own work.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, can you tell us a bit about how this journey began for you, this musical journey?
I think, if you want to trace it way back to some kind of roots, I did have a lot of fun making made up songs and musicals and all sorts of things with my sister when we were kids, and my parents were both musicians and studying classical music when I was growing up, and we kind of had easy access to music. And also I think what was important for me was that I had some role models in my life that were doing music full time as a job, and I think it's really important for people to see it, to realize that it can be a job, and the first step is just seeing it. But then, of course, later on, it's about learning how to do it and how to maintain it. And that was through my father, who was a kind of avant-garde composer and a music teacher. He was also playing in bands randomly in Reykjavik, and the music scene is quite versatile. And he was jumping in, playing with this band here and this band there. And me and my sister would go to concerts with him when we were maybe from maybe the age 12 even, I think. We went to see his crazy Balkan band, and we were dancing all night. And just these small experiences, which were quite big for me on a personal level. They, I think they had the influence that I felt like it was available to me. And I think that's where I was very fortunate. And I think a lot of people maybe don't have that, and they have to realize this for themselves later in their lives. So I was quite lucky, and that's maybe one of the reasons why I started so early, I think.
Did you sort of make a conscious choice at any time that, I want to make music my career, I want to do this professionally in a similar way to my parents, or was it just more of just a natural process, would you say? That, you went from almost experimenting and having fun with making tracks with your sister to then actually kind of making this a full career?
I think it was a transition. I think it was I think it's one of those things that you have to practice. You have to practice how to do it. And for me, I was in school and I was playing in these bands as kind of like a fun thing you do with your friends. You're kind of entertaining yourself and each other, and it's kind of cool. It's a thing, and then as life goes on and I graduated, there was a clear moment when I knew I can't do everything at the same time if I want to do anything well and be present. And then there was a moment when I decided that I was going to just focus on being in a band and playing and touring and learning. And then there was a few years of doing that. And all of a sudden I'm here and I'm 26 and I'm supposed to be some kind of an adult, and I'm just still doing what I do, I guess, is the answer. And
so you were studying at one point and you decided to kind of come away from that to focus on music completely?
Yeah, I graduated from my college or sort of before university level, and then I started studying computer science in the university, and I stopped after one semester. I made it through one semester though. I didn't fail, but in the next one it was too much. It was a very intense program, but it was helpful. I think maybe if I had chosen like an easier program, then I also would have been balancing constantly. Yeah. But there were so two deep ends, and I couldn't maintain both of them.
And do you think there's maybe the fact that you chose computer science and then you've also continued on with your music career, but you've also engaged in quite an advanced way with technology from what I can see. And so maybe there's an underpinning interest in technology as well as music there?
There is and there isn't. I mean, absolutely there is. I have an interest in technology and making sounds with computers and programming. But at the same time, I chose the computer science kind of for two reasons. And it was because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do anything. Okay. So I picked something that maybe wasn't necessarily my strongest skill. Yeah. And then my father is a electronic musician and works a lot in Pure Data and Super Collider, these kind of programming world for music. And I've constantly had this influence also from him about making new music basically, and using science and computers to do that. So I also thought this was some kind of a voice that I had in my life for a very long time, and I wanted to see what would happen if I pursued it. But then at the end of the day, I mean, it was a choice made from possibly the wrong reasons. Like I wanted to try something to prove something, not because I had a passion for it. And I ended up learning that, you choose something because you have a passion for it, and that's the thing that will keep you afloat, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about how you started first recording with your sister, I mean, did someone show you how to use all the equipment, or did you just have to figure it out for yourself?
Yeah, Dad did that. He was supposed to be with us. We had basically the band was just we wrote the songs. I mean, I would write most of the songs, but we would come together and play them, and they would exist live only. And then we were always thinking, okay, we have to make an album. And we went to a cabin. No, it was a house. My relative's house in the countryside, and we were there we kind of booked it out for a week to go and record an album. And Dad was going to be there with us. But he had to cancel last minute. But he left us with a laptop and a sound card. And then he had taped and written the instructions, what goes where. And he gave us one mic, and then we had a GarageBand. Yeah. And we kind of knew how to use GarageBand. But how to use a sound card, we didn't know. So we had to follow the instructions. We called him and we set it all up. And we had this fantastic approach, which I still... It's so naive and amazing. We knew how to play songs. We were 4 people in the band at the time, and we recorded every single track, maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times at most. And then if we had a good take that we were happy with, we would delete all the other ones because we didn't see it necessary. And then we played computer games for most of the time that we were in this cabin, and we were 14 years old. And then we showed Dad the results, and he was very confused about why we had done certain things. But then he said that we should mix it ourselves because we'd gone this far and we had done everything. He said we should mix it. And at that point I was very frustrated because I knew that there were people who knew how to do this professionally, and I knew I was very. But he taught us how to mix. He said it was 4 things, and this is still my mantra. It's the levels, it's the panning, it's the EQ and compression, and then it's effects.
Okay.
I'm actually not sure if the EQ and compression were in the same one, but that was the mixing lesson. And at the time, I didn't know any of those concepts, and it was really frustrating as a teenager. And when we said it was finished, it was ready, he did give it an extra mix because it was not very good. But that's the story. I've come a long way since then.
And are you quite hands-on with things like mixing, or do you prefer to focus more on performance and jamming and improvisation, and then hand the mix over to an engineer to take care of?
It depends. I actually have been doing more and more mixing myself because it's so entangled with the production and with the writing and composing for me in the last few years.
Yeah.
But before I started using Ableton more, before I started doing my own production, and of course I would hand it over, even if I was noodling in a different program and stuff. But since getting into Ableton and getting into producing things myself, I found it an integral part of the process is doing a premix, and then you hand it over. Of course, if it's something that's a serious release, you hand it over to a mixing engineer. But you are across it all, and you know where everything is, and you've lived inside the music for so long that it's easy for you to navigate. But having someone who's a skilled mixing engineer is like it's a really important and kind of technical work. So it's also good to just know where your limits are and then leave it on, pass it on to someone else.
And so once you sort of spend some time doing these early recordings, I mean, how did you know when it was time to approach a label and release something?
My mom sent the first album to this label in Germany because she loved it so much, the label.
Okay.
She sent it in a physical mail, like the homemade CD and some cutting from a newspaper, and then a little text. And then we got a response, and they really liked it and wanted to put it out. So that was the end of that. That was when we were 15. And then my parents had to sign the contract because we were too young to legally sign it. And then with Samaris, it was pretty much just this one label. Used to be called One Little Indian, and now it's One Little Independent. And they approached us, and we liked it, and we said yes. So I guess at the time it was not a hard sell for me in labels, and also not much reaching out. It was basically just the kind of a random / intuitive process. Like this is on the table. Let's see if it's nice, and then seems nice.
Yeah, I think when we spoke as well not long ago about, you'd mentioned this philosophy almost that you have of just being open to opportunities like that as and when they arise, rather than necessarily chasing things or working really hard to make a connection here and make something happen. And I thought that was really an interesting way of looking at things. Would you say that that's been like that way of working has yielded the best results in general? Or?
I would say yes and no. Yes. I mean, I don't really know any other way, so it'd be hard for me to say what is the right way. But I think it's a mix of, everything you do is a mix of hard work and then luck and being open to new connections. I mean, I think that there is a lot of value in being a go-getter and seeking things, but there's also a lot of value in accepting what you have and loving and nurturing what you already have, and trusting. I mean, I've been in situations where I have trusted, and it's proven really, really positive and really valuable, and I've also been in situations where I have slacked and I haven't done my homework, and I've signed bad deals or put myself in situations that I didn't want to be in. But I was kind of too lazy or ignorant to address it. So the practice for me is more just being, always remaining open, but having a bit of a bullshit detector and being able to kind of like practice not letting off guard and be too comfortable in the space, but rather accepting and nurturing and loving what you have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And I think I've read you mention somewhere about being that sometimes you do have to be on your guard in the music industry and know your worth, and I think especially for you coming into the industry so young, how was that process for you when you really had to start engaging with the music industry and all of the characters that come with that?
I think it's really tricky, and I think that as much as we as a community and the infrastructure that exists in a lot of places that is meant to look after musicians and meant to help them, I still think that it's incredibly difficult to put a price tag on what you do, and it's really difficult to it's really difficult just to be in that kind of negotiating space when it's also something like it's your art and it's your work, and it's kind of your identity as well. So it's a really complicated space to navigate, and then predicting the future. Like, are you going to make 5 amazing records, or are you only going to make 1 good one and then 4 bad ones? So like, are you even going to make 5 records? So like, what do you want to do? And it's hard to be in that space when you're very young, and people obviously treat you like an adult in that way, and then you have to find out, who can you trust, and those are things that I think, no matter how much infrastructure we have, which we feel like there are institutions that are always trying to educate and support more and more, I still think it's really difficult. And I actually think that the only way to do it properly is just by making mistakes and by learning. So I think that when you are starting out and you're young, nothing is too holy. Like, be open and be playful and trusting, but also be careful. But then remember, things can turn out to be bad. So don't make crazy big deals and have crazy big expectations. I feel like in my past, I feel really grateful that I have been in these bands and I've had time to test things and play around with this world and this industry and learn a few things. And then when I did my solo career, I knew that I wasn't ready to have a label unless it was a really good or particular kind of label, and I knew what I needed. I was able to kind of understand the industry sort of the structures that you need to understand to be able to make a living of it. But at the time when we were starting as a band, we had no idea, so we would just take whatever we could, or and then learn from it. So I feel really grateful that I actually had the time to do that, and I think maybe a lot of people don't have that chance, or they're maybe put a lot of effort into something and then it doesn't work, or things like that, which I feel like I had time and room to experiment with.
And also one thing I wanted to touch on as well, you mentioned just there about your label. You eventually formed a label that you've used as an imprint for your own work. And how is that experience of self-releasing compared to working with other labels?
I think they're both great formats. I think they're both really valid, and but I think that for me, like, I just didn't want to be like a lot of people are very desperate to get a label, and they think that if they get a label, everything will open up to them and they will be somebody, And I think that's so wrong. I think that when the time is right, the right door will open for you. And I have my own imprint because it just suits me, and it's so obviously I work with distribution companies and I work with partners. Like, I'm not going around taking my CDs to the shops. Like there's an infrastructure that exists, but but when the time comes and when there is both a need from my end and also somebody who is out there and who wants to do something with me that works for me and what I create, then I am ready to go into that kind of a collaboration. So I think that's what you learn also when you get a bit older, is that you can do anything you want on your own, and everything else is just a bonus. So when the time is right, that's when you should jump on it and accept it. Not just jump on any train because it's in front of you. Like that's the lesson.
And in the past, you've been, it seems, a natural collaborator. I mean, you've met some wonderful people and made amazing things. And do you have a preference of working alone or collaborating, or does it depend just where you are in yourself at a particular time?
I think it's kind of intuitive. And one thing I would like to experiment more with is also me reaching out to other people that I want to work with, because I've been so much focused on, I will either do it myself and find a way to do things, or when the right person appears, it will happen that way. But I think that there's a really beautiful, because I get contacted every now and then by people who want to work together, and sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say it's not possible, or or just say no, which is great too. A good practice. And then I only recently started thinking, like, maybe it's also important for me to reach out to somebody I've never met before or talked to before, and see if there's any grounds for collaboration. So that's my next thing that I want to explore. But I think all are really important. It's really important to be strong in yourself and know what you want and know what you can. And then it's also really important to meet with others and learn from them and grow together. And that's what you do in a band often, because the responsibility is so shared. And it's such we can all stand together or we all fail together. And that's really a kind of a dynamic that I find is very unique to kind of like a band agreement. Even if somebody's in the front and someone's in the back, like it's still like a shared responsibility. And that's a kind of a dynamic that you don't find that often, I find.
So let's talk about this concept of doing a lot with little. And I think this would probably be a good time to actually look at your live set project that you've brought with us, and maybe first of all, like what does it mean to you when we say doing a lot with little in a musical sense? What does that mean for you?
You can see my live set. It's full of stuff.
Yeah.
And I even deleted a few channels because I was a bit hectic on the CPU.
Yeah.
But but then again, I was touring a lot and I wanted to travel with as little as possible. So in terms of gear and equipment, I had this little MIDI controller. And I was finding, I have to put it on a keyboard stand, I have to attach it to some device, and then I attach that to my mic stand. And it was a bit of it had a presence, this little guy. So I borrowed this on a permanent loan. I probably should pay back my dues. But this is a foot controller.
Yeah.
It is here attached into a USB cable. And this little guy has been my companion on tour for many, many, many years. And my mission was to design my live set so that I could carry only the laptop, the sound card, in-ear headphones, and then this guy, and then a guitar. And so the challenge was, you don't have any knobs to turn. You can only press things. But it has the layout of a keyboard, and it's 12 buttons, but you have kind of like, in the middle you can select like its own world. It has like a, you can press that and then you can get into a different world. And it has a whole new setting. So it's got many, many options. But then the challenge was how do you optimize your live set so that you can only work with pressing a single button and with your foot. Yeah. So there's one challenge, which was obviously designing the live set so that would work. But then there's another challenge is sort of in the brain. Like, how do you remember where you put everything? And how can you optimize it so that you can just play and enjoy yourself? And you're not like always thinking like, where did I put this? Where did I put that? Like it's a map. It's like there's so many options and so many different things. So those were the two challenges that I had to face. But yeah, you can see the live set here. I have my songs. here on the right side.
Yeah.
And I have often like if you have to kind of cue into something, I have the first one, and then the second second scene often has another, like this one has just another clip that comes in late in the middle of the song, but this kind of drone continues, and here's like this is like my verse and this is my chorus kind of vibe, and then there's or maybe something is just a click. Like the click really made things smooth for me, so I really recommend having a click on a separate output that only you can hear. And so here's like my count-in click, and then here's my actual like song, starting. So those were kind of things that were really helpful to work with. Was just these basic kind of procedures.
And so you mentioned these dummy clips. Also. I think you've got on this far left track.
Yeah, on the voice.
Yeah. So what are these?
So I have sends only on my voice, and I send the dry signal through the sound card, so there's minimum latency. Just route it directly out on its own channel. And then I have on this here on my voice, I'm only working with the effects. So I have I have only my send, so now I can have a bunch of reverb, or I can have a pitch down effect, which is sometimes cool in the choruses. But the thing is, without the knobs on my extra minimal set, then I would do something like I would map some of these clips, and I would have like here. This is my noise reverb, and I press play, and it gives you a little envelope of a noisy reverb, and then it goes back down. So it's as you can see, it's just a dummy clip. It's just a piece of audio, and I've completely silenced it in the here in the mixer. It's at 0 gain, and then I go in here in the envelope, and I just draw in whatever my heart desires. So it's a really powerful way to operate with a small foot controller like this. Yeah. So in the middle of a song, I can be like, okay, now is a great moment for a little bit of crazy reverb, so I just press that button and I have a moment of that.
That's a really, really interesting application, and the fact that you're using an envelope as well, it adds a lot of movement rather than just turning and ascend. This is a fantastic technique.
It's super fun, exactly, and it's there's so many things. Like you go here in the here, you look at what you're working with. There's so many variables that you can even transpose things. Like it's just whatever you think of, you can create it. But then and then of course working with the scenes, this is really good as well, because if you're moving from like a verse to a chorus, every time you go straight into the chorus, you can change the reverb so it's really big with this kind of dummy clip envelope. Yeah. And you can make them really long. Like sometimes I have the full playback. I put that in as a dummy clip, so I can actually see where the whole song is. I don't know if I have it here. Yeah, here's like a clip that is many minutes, and I have mapped out before I muted the track, before I lowered the gain to 0. You can see here that this is my pitch down. Send, and here I know, okay, in this section I want to have this much pitch down, and then it goes up, and you can kind of sculpt it so that you don't have to think about it. And I mean, this is quite basic, but this is just the way to do it with only the clips. So, it's a similar thought process as when you do it in linear mode.
And are these all set to work with your voice in this live set? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you use this technique on any other instruments?
I do. I mean, I usually don't route the guitar through Ableton like this. I usually send it straight to an amp, and I have a few pedals. But I wanted this to be like, for this particular performance, I wanted to have like only Ableton and maximum 2 MIDI controllers. So I also routed the guitar through here. But no, normally I would just have my playback and my voice in Ableton.
And so what's this? You've got this group, this playback group here, and there seems to be a lot happening. So what's going on in this group exactly?
So The reason I put it into a group is because I wanted to create this master fade. The master fade was a lot of thinking behind the master fade, and there was also like a light bulb moment. But I basically wanted to be able to press a button on my foot controller. I can show you now, and it would start this envelope on the master fade, and where it would like lower everything that was happening in the playback. I mean, the effects here are still running, and the loop that I have on my send, I have a send here that is just a looper, that's still running because it's only in this group that I'm sending to the master fade. So it's just a really cool way. Like when I started experimenting with how to use just basic tracks as kind of like the same way as you use sends. Almost. That was when a lot of doors opened in my mind about how this program you can just plug in anything anywhere, and it's really creative in that way. But this was it's a simple thing, but it was really effective, and it took a lot of thinking for some reason to get to there. But basically, that's the only reason I put it into a group. But I have a Playback 1 and Playback 2. They're just kind of different. Oh, this one's frozen because I was trying to lower the CPU, but it's they're basically they are like one playback is the main playback, and then anything extra. So I tried to minimize it so there was only like maximum 2 channels doing any playback, and they're really simple because I wanted to have it. Any playback that you have has to be there for a reason, and it has to be with a lot of space to add on top whatever is important. So, they're either simple loops or they're just little simple beats.
Can we hear a couple?
Of course. Here's White Sun. And this one, I mean, maybe I should have unfrozen it. Okay, so I start with my reverb here. This was on my dummy clip, so I don't have to remember to turn it on and off.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember what this organ was supposed to do, but then I think at one point it like fades in. And then this one was my chorus. It's a loop, but this one was my like chorus moment, again with some effects and some activity here. Oh yeah, you can hear it. There's some envelopes happening, sending it into something.
Okay.
And so yeah, it's a simple loop here, but that's when it came in very handy that you can have an unlinked loop. So for this one little guy, he's looping, but once I want to control the envelope, I can unlink it so that this particular envelope doesn't adhere to the loop timing.
Okay.
So you can hear it sort of gradually does some things, and that's really handy for me because then I don't have to do it, because then I can just enjoy singing and being present on stage.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and and then there's what else do I have? Yeah, well, I have. I mean, I kind of just want to unfreeze this because I don't know why I was freezing it. It works fine now. But Think Too Fast had a little beat that I made and a little delay at the start. And then, so it's just started with a beat just to get me in the groove, and I was doing an intro on the guitar. And then when I'm ready to actually start the song, and this is often when I'm playing with other people, we could all look at each other's eyes, and then I could say, okay, we're ready, and then we move on to the next one. And this one is kind of like, it has a little keyboard part that works really well with my guitar because I have a click or this drum rack. You can also do it without the drum rack. And then sometimes it's even more effective because people don't know that you have a click, and they don't know how the hell you're keeping in beat with this little keyboard part. But then that grows and becomes it's basically just the playback on the entire song.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're simple things, but to me they're really effective because I try to just do it tastefully rather than try to have many things going on at the same time.
Yeah. And so in a kind of normal scenario, most of the live work would be vocals and guitar work from your side. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you play any other instruments live during any of your performances?
I would sometimes play. Yeah, I was always before I started trying to minimize everything. I was traveling with a little Casio keyboard and connecting that to a guitar pedals and things like that. And then it just became too heavy. It was like a very basic. I just didn't want to be carrying around a heavy flight case everywhere I went. So I ended up just ditching it altogether. But yeah, I could play some keyboards or piano if there was one in the space. But I tried to make this enough. Yeah.
And how about like in the box? When we say in the box or inside live, are there any things that you can do in real time with the sounds? Like I think you talked about using Looper and
my favorite one is the Granulator. Because it's just so crazy. It's like a looper, but it's like it has it has another layer to it, which is like the randomness, which the looper doesn't really have. And the looper is really powerful in just when you want to know where everything is. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Granulator is really powerful if you don't want to know where anything is. Right. So I could be singing or I could just be talking to you, and I could just be here like playing this little thing. Or I could just be later is really powerful. Check. I could make like little spectrum. And you see it moves around in its own way. Yeah. It does and then you can make it. Obviously, you can change the grain.
Yeah,
create
that's really powerful.
Or create just like a basic drone.
Yeah.
And I can pitch shift it or with my sense. And you can loop on top of that. You can have like one crazy one. Yeah, or do like melodies. Well, no melody here, but just drones. Just drones. So it adds an element of not knowing where anything is, which is great. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. You want something that is out of control, and then sometimes you want the looper, and you want something that is completely under control. So that's why I like this Granulator so much. It just adds some kind of craziness sometimes to your live set, and it's so easy with the basically what I was doing. I had the Granulator input on the voice send, and then I can, with a simple pressing of a button or grab, which I've mapped to my MIDI controller, I can just keep pressing and it adds little grains, adds new samples into the Granulator. So it's it can be really fun.
And this is This is one of the Max for Live devices, isn't it? This comes in. Which one is that now? It's building blocks or something, isn't it? Or no, it's a standalone one actually.
I think it's a standalone thing.
Yeah. And in what sort of circumstances would you then choose the looper? Would that be maybe more for the guitar, or?
I use it for voices as well. Basically, Granulator, you're not layering when you use it. You have a single take, randomly timed, but you're not layering sounds. So the looper, of course, you can have it so that it's attached to a grid, your click, which is really useful. And but then the fact that you can build on top of it makes it just a totally different thing. Totally different. So I would use the looper if I'm layering, basically, or if I have something timed very specifically.
And one of the other things I wanted to ask about, when we look at this idea of doing a lot with little, you talked about this power of using simple transposing of clips to sort of create harmonies and really take one sound much further in a kind of composition setting. Have you got anything in this project that might demonstrate that?
I don't think I have, but it would be quite easy to open. I'll just quickly save this, and I'll show you one where I did it's just like, basically the absolutely most minimal effort you can put into the recording and the maximum effort you put into the editing and the copy and pasting.
Yeah.
And you can see here, I believe this was my original sample. And I recorded this on my laptop mic, and with lots of reverb on it. And then I started chopping it up. So I would just grab a piece of this audio, and I would just this is without any transposing. But then as we move into the other tracks, this starts to transpose. Okay. And the result is that I created I created these lines using only the same clip, and then built like a kind of a choir piece, and wrote a new melody on top, which I can play for you, just so you get an understanding of what I'm trying to explain. So this is even this part here, you just don't hesitate taking, this is obviously this here, copy this, paste it here, and then transpose it from 7 up to -5 steps. And you can play around with this because you can move them up and down, and you can obviously, be very quick at doing it. But at the same time, it's just this approach of like stitching together every single note as if they are sheet music, rather than working with long phrases or thinking like, you have to redo everything. Like when you're writing, it's often for me so much fun to just sit down, and it's almost like a craft. You just get into it, and you quickly listen, you copy, you paste, and then you listen again, and it's like this step by step. You move into creating like a whole world that kind of works. And then, of course, down the line, you can re-record these lines, and you can sing them all in one, or play them on instruments or whatever. But just the composing, using this tool with copy pasting and transposing, on the grid or off the grid, just taking the little bits that you need. Using those tiny little bits of sound, and then playing with the transpose. It seems counterintuitive because there are so many technologies. Like you can map it on a sampler, you can do everything to help you not have to do that. But I find that the process is so interesting. You get such different results if you sit there with every single piece, and you have to manually choose it, and you get something that is more human and something that's more weird. And I am really interested in that. Like, what do you get when you're not using any of the technology? Because you can mix it. If you can play with this, then you can add on top of it like a sampler or an arpeggiator or using in all the MIDI effects. There's so many fun, with the chords and with the pitch and all these things that help you speed through that process. But it's so fun to do it like this, like as if you were a composer just writing the notes on the piece of paper. Every single note you have to put it in by hand. So it's for me kind of like a little bit almost romantic process. The slow music.
I think it's a discipline as well, because I mean, today in today's world of music making, there's just so many apps, where you can download endless amounts of loops and sounds, and it can be quite easy to think, well, how do I make this track more interesting? I'm going to find another sound and throw it in. But I think, when you're working with a really limited sound palette and doing lots of things with that limited set, it somehow can sound really organic and very together. And I think that's something that you've really mastered with what we hear.
We can, there's always room for improvement.
Of course. We're going to go into some questions in a minute, but one thing I just wanted to also check in on was your use of effects and sends. We didn't really look at some of your effects chains because you've got some really lush reverbs and textures going on. I thought it might be nice to just have a quick look at those effects sends. Yeah.
I've opened up the live set again, and so for me it was I was trying to maximize using the sends. I can send all my playbacks into these things, or I can send everything everywhere. And so the question is like, how do you choose only, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could probably add more, but try not to go overboard. And the question was, what is necessary and what sounds best kind of universally? Like what functions? And then of course, trying to maximize that, I started sending the sends into other sends. And so you have it's so fun to be free with where you send things. Basically I chose the hall reverb as my basic reverb. I've taken off some of the low end because it's a it's a concert hall. It's the one that opens up when you open this Valhalla vintage verb, and it's just so lovely that I just wanted to have only that. And then I have a crunchy shimmer with this amp effect. And this was just something. I mean, I love the shimmer. I love having kind of wobbly, but it's a very easily recognizable sound. Yeah. But I've kind of just decided to embrace it, so I actually use it quite a bit. And this crunch gives it a really cool texture because they're already so. Yeah, the shimmer with a little bit of distortion or a little crunch is really nice. And this was probably just adding a limiter just to help you not so I don't mess up my envelopes. I don't know why I did it. But looping on a send is something I could have done on the voice, I'm pretty sure, unless it was because I was using it with sends only. But it's quite nice to have it on a send because then, I can actually send the guitar into the looper here as well if I chose to. So it's just gives you a bit of flexibility, and it's worked well for me. Delay, very basic delay. Pitch down is a max. It's a Max for Live plugin called Max Spectral Harmonizer, and I think there are many of these pitching plugins that exist out there, and I just chose this one because it's just so basic. Like you can actually do crazy things with it with the feedback, where it becomes more of a crystallizer. But just in terms of like the basic, like pitching this up and down, it doesn't have too much latency. It always has a little bit, and then pitching it up an octave for your little chipmunk guy. Obviously, I have that one through a lot of reverb because it's only supposed to be, just to create a little bit of a choir movement or like a more of a widening your
Yeah.
more epicness. For me, I think it's really great to have a pitch down and pitch up, and sometimes I even have them both on at the same time if I want to automate it like that. But yeah, basically these are playing with the scents. I mean, it also helps with when you use the dummy clips and the envelopes, playing with your scents. That's the I love that. It's just really handy, and it's easy to have it like so you can. It's visually also very nice to have it on send rather than on the track for me.
Right, I think it's time to dive into some questions. So I've got a few coming through here. So let's read this one out. So from Endless In-Betweens, JFDR has released 2 beautiful scores on Bandcamp recently. I'd love to hear more about the inspirations and creative process behind this, and if she is likely to do more work like this.
Oh yeah. Scoring work has been something that has just kind of come to me. It's not like it's actually not something I've been seeking out so much, although I really enjoy the work. But it's something that I've done a little bit of, and it was also timed really well because I was doing it during COVID. So I was in lockdown. I was in Australia with my partner, and it was no gigs, obviously. So I could have this kind of like a 9 to 5 almost vibe where I was working on a score, and I was in a routine because of it. So mentally it was really good. Just kept me completely stable with that. And the inspirations behind it, was one of them. It was a crime kind of mystery series, mini-series in Iceland, and it was the kind of like a 90s thing almost. So I was doing this like strumming guitars and sort of a shitty acoustic guitar thing that I was doing these like kind of like a feel good, but also with a lot of pain. Obviously there's a tragedy, and there's always this kind of sadness that is underlying in everything. And then using a lot of voices, because that's sort of an easy way to kind of touch into the characters and into the sort of psyche and the humanness. And the other one is called Backyard Village, and that's a kind of like a movie about friendship and about sort of depression and things like that. And there it was just very minimal, kind of ambient inspiration, and the source material was sort of like these bells that the director had, these sort of wind chimes and things in his backyard, and he wanted to include them, and so it was sort of a matter of finding them recordings of these bells and these church bells and things that have like a resonance, ominous resonance, and trying to use that as the source material to create the score. And will I do more? That's a great question. I think I need to work on another album. If I keep doing a lot of projects like this, it would be a long time till the next album. But it's always if it comes, it's great. If I have the time, it's also great. So I think it's just time and place. Yeah.
Okay. Second question from Paparazzia. How do you know when to stop? How do you know when a song or a track is finished?
I think that gets easier with age. That also gets easier when you care a little bit less. I found this really interesting because last year I did an EP with a few sort of outtakes, B-sides, if you will, of my album from last year, and I was coming back to a few songs that I hadn't been able to finish for this album, and there was this distance that had been created because it was a long time since I finished the last album, and it was a while since it came out. But I opened them up, and it took me like 2 days, and I had finished a song that I had been trying to work on for 6 months before, and that's because it was a big distance, and I think that it was really interesting to explore that space because I don't like it. I don't like not loving my work and not being completely overtaken by the work. That's what I love, and that's what I try to be in, like a state of immersion. But there it was just outside of me, and I came in, I saw it, I kind of cleaned it up, and I finished it, and I was so happy with it. It was satisfying. So I don't know when to stop, But I know that if you have problems stopping, then you need to create a distance. You need to either like dislike the work a little bit more, or like not dislike it, but not maybe dislike the work. Like you don't need to love the work and the working so much. You just need to love the result and the passion for making the thing, and then like leaving it. But you don't have to get stuck in the work and the time that it takes to do something. But yeah, I think you finish it when you're happy with it, and I think that it's a long process, and it involves other people coming in and telling you like their opinion, and it involves exhaustion, and it also involves the distance, like creating the distance between yourself and the work.
Okay, a question from Thomas Harrison. Would love to know more about your track Back to the Sky and how it was collaborating with Olafur Arnolds, if I pronounced that correctly.
It was great. It was actually, Ole sent me the track in February last year, and he was in Bali and he was working on some demos for his album. And I have known him for many years, and actually we had talked about working together a long time ago, and it didn't happen. So he sent it to me, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is the moment. We're going to do this. And I sat down and listened to the song on my phone, and it was like instantly the melody existed. It was like it was already existing, and I started recording on my phone before I had even finished listening through the song. So And I told him right away. I was like, okay, cool. I know what it's supposed to sound like, but I need to write the words. And that took me longer. I was really working on it a lot, and it took me a few weeks to put it together. But it was sort of because that didn't come to me so effortlessly at the time. And but basically I've managed to do it. Ole came back to Iceland. I went to a studio, recorded it. And then somehow a few months later he released it, and I was amazed by how quickly he could do it, because it took me years to make my album. So he did a great job of just like getting it and finishing it and releasing it. I was very impressed with that. But my job was quite simple. It just like came to me. I had to work on the lyrics, and then that was it.
Okay. Another question here regarding the dummy clips. How have you created your live set? Do you find yourself composing with it? For example, the reverb envelopes. How do you know how they feel and how you can use them, or do you find yourself writing with them?
Yes and no. I actually making my last album, kind of halfway through the process, I started using Ableton to sort of just work on the production of everything, and I found it so inspiring that I started writing more songs in the box, which I hadn't done before. Like I had done it, but it wasn't album material. But once I was working on the album and I was working in Ableton, it started to merge, because it's impossible not to. You're so inside of it, and you're so inside of the album, and you're so inside of this world that new ideas kept coming. So it actually moved very naturally from just having a song on a guitar or a piano into putting it into Ableton and using Ableton to create the world around it, to starting to create in Ableton first. And then the world around it was naturally integrated. And some of those songs were like a song called Think Too Fast, which was a sample from another song, and then I was playing it on a MIDI keyboard, and that song existed completely in the box. Like I didn't even really know how to play it at all. I had to learn it later on. And the same with a song called Gravity. I didn't really know how to play that. I was using a sample from something else, and it was in a completely different key, so it was its own. It's definitely its own process. It's very, very different. And it's not something that I consciously started doing. It's something that just kind of happened. But regarding using those dummy clips and envelopes and things like that for writing, I haven't used it very much for writing until I actually started preparing for this set. was talking to you about it in emails, but I was just getting distracted from improvising and preparing my Ableton set, that I actually got distracted and started writing songs again in the computer, which I hadn't done for a while like that. So just playing around with it and opening it up and having no direction actually led to creating something new. So the answer is kind of. Yes, kind of.
We've got probably time for one more, and then we're going to hear a bit more music from you. There's a question here from Craig Fugelberg. On your song Destinies Upon Us, what instrument are you using for the soaring sound in the background? It sounds like a cello.
I used only the Casio keyboard called SA25 or something. It's the same one as I used a lot on that album. I used it in White Sun, and I used it in Instant Patience, and pretty much most of those songs from Brazil. I used that tiny little keyboard. I bought it on the corner somewhere in a flea market for €5.
Nice.
And it stayed with me for so many years and was an inspiration for so many songs. But there's a sound on there called aeroplane or something, or a laser. I think it was maybe the laser, and if you press it, it just like a and it's really cool through all the cool expensive effects that we used in the studio in New York. But and then there was a guitar. There was a guitar element in there as well, which was quite soaring. But I'm pretty sure you are thinking of the Casio keyboard. It's a strange sound and really cool.
Okay. Well, Craig, you better get to the flea markets then. Look for some old Casio keyboards.
Yes.
All right. Then I think we're about ready for some more music. It's been really, really wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I don't think we speak again after the performance, so I'm going to leave the stage to you. But yeah, it's been wonderful. Had a great time, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the first performance of 2021. Epicness. Made it all the way to June without playing a single song. But I'm going to play just one song, and it's called Gravity. Let's see where I put it here. Okay. A line that meets another line, arrows shooting endlessly, and the anchor in my ribcage, reminding me of the gravity. I feel how I'm hopelessly warping our reality. Wishing things were different between you and me. I'm veiling thoughts in counterpoint, alternately wavering. There's miles between the water and the moon. Oh, when my eyes
me with your eyes. Briefly leave the clouds behind. Oh, to feel your breath in mine. Constellated, constellated, constellated. Even when I get the things I dare to dream and want, I can't defy the gravity. Can't defy the gravity. Even when I get the things I dare to dream and want, I can't defy the gravity. I can't defy the gravity. Even when I get the things I dare to dream.
Thank you so much.